Okay guys, welcome to Coworking for Meetup with Keith Ippel. As you already know, we called you on his presentation, and his Meetup is a guy that basically is a serial entrepreneur. He had a couple of companies, 4 or something, for 15 years. Currently he runs a Spring Accelerator, basically a school for entrepreneurs in Vancouver. And we met at Impact Hub on Monday. There was a pretty good conference there, a couple of great sessions. Some of them have been run by Keith, and I have to say that those have been maybe the best session I recently seen in Serbia from guys that came from abroad. So you can learn a lot from Keith, and you can ask him almost everything, because he really knows a lot about entrepreneurship and everything else. So we asked him to talk with you and speak about early stage capital raising, but I'm sure that you can also ask whatever you want from other parts of entrepreneur's business, because you probably check out his LinkedIn profile and everything else. So let's start, and welcome, Keith, to our Coworking.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's great to be here. This is my second trip to the Balkans. My first trip was actually in the beginning of December, and I loved the time that I spent. In that particular trip, I spent time in Belgrade and in Novi Sad, and then also happened to go down to Sarajevo as well. And so it was a great opportunity for me to get exposed to the region. Maybe just to add a little bit more to my background, maybe to help spur conversation. So the companies that I have worked with, the first bunch of companies were technology-enabled companies. So that included data visualization, an ad network, mobile user interface. I've also worked with some services companies, so I've done some management consulting myself. I've also worked with an ad agency and a digital agency, and I have worked in a couple of accelerators. Of course, the most recent one being my own, and that's Spring. And so with Spring, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help entrepreneurs, relatively speaking, at the early stages, right? Idea on a napkin through to say $1 million, $1.5 million in annual revenue is kind of our sweet spot. So we do a lot of work with people who are trying to validate an idea, trying to prove it, trying to get it launched, increase the probability of success. So as we like to say, we want to put everybody in the 10%. And so the statistic in North America is that 90% of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And so our goal is to put everybody in the 10% as opposed to the 90, right? And so how do we increase that probability of success? So we do a lot of work around that. We're headquartered in Vancouver, and then we have locations in many cities around the world, 30 cities actually right now. And then what I would call our anchor cities in a couple of places. In Europe, it would actually be Impact Hub Belgrade as our city partner in Belgrade. In Africa, we have 2 fantastic partners in Lagos, Nigeria. And then in the US, it's in Seattle. So that, just to give you a bit of a sense as to where we are. I've spent a lot of time raising money, both for my own companies as well as for entrepreneurs' companies. So probably about $12 million in early stage capital into my own businesses. And then in the support of other entrepreneurs, probably pushing another 12 or 15 million now. We've helped entrepreneurs raise about 8.5 million in the last 2 years. So my strengths are sort of idea formation, product strategy, launch, team formation, and funding. So that's kind of a bit about my background. So I really like to ride my bicycle. I ride my bike every day, rain or shine, and I have ridden in the snow. I do not recommend it. Bad idea. So, so that's a little bit about me. So just to kind of round it out. And what I'd love to do is I'd actually just love to hear, like if you guys, maybe we'll start here and kind of go around the room, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell me what you're doing. And then we'll use that as a starting point. So we're gonna start here and we'll go around.
Who will start?
You?
Me?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Hello, I'm Anita, and I am in IT and marketing field.
Okay.
I have a few firms in the past, and now I'm starting a startup with two of my friends from Belgrade.
Okay.
We will work with a service, how can I say that in English, in loving memory for it's an idea that we support people who deceased something.
Yeah.
And we would help them to bury loved ones from the road to Serbia and to keep clean their sanitary and etc.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, the next day after tomorrow, we will run the website, and that would be the start. Today we announced that we are start business, and tomorrow everything will be on the air.
Good for you. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So we shall see, will we be successful, but
Yeah.
we hope.
Good. Good. Thank you. Hi.
Oh, hi. My name is Natalia. I'm still a student here on University of Kragujevac,
Yeah.
and I'm working along. I'm working as a full stack developer at for IT firm here in Kragujevac
Mm,
for a year now.
great.
That's it. I'm very interested in entrepreneuring, so I'm here to learn,
Great.
to hear new stuff.
Great. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Janko. I'm still student here in Kragujevac. I'm also working as a developer on hydroinformatics. And I don't have a startup yet, but I would like to make some my ideas to startups.
Great.
Thanks.
Cool. Good for you. That's great.
Hi, my name is Alexander. I'm 22 years old. Currently, I am working in retail. I'm working with hair salon equipment. As of recently, I'm also working in marketing, internet marketing with Georgia Jokic.
Great.
Yeah, and currently as a practicant. Learning, yeah. Currently learning.
Apprentice.
Apprentice, yes. I'm his apprentice, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But I'm also very interested in entrepreneurship, and I came here to learn from someone who has a lot of experience.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.
Hi, my name is Nemanja. I'm a student as well, studying economics here in Kragujevac. I started, well, I can say it's almost a startup with a few friends. We're making clothing, like urban clothing.
Okay.
And of course, it's growing steadily, but slow, really slow. For almost 2 years now, and but currently I'm trying to pivot that into some technological startups and ideas. I have a few ideas, but I think that my main problem is forming the right team and, of course, raising the capital at the beginning.
Right.
So I'm very interested in that because I'm one of those who don't believe that here in this place we can raise a lot of capital for some tech company or something like that. I know it's possible, of course, but
Right.
probably a little harder than some other places. So that's it. More or less.
Okay. Good. Thank you. That's great.
My name is Nemanja from Business Development Center Kragujevac. We are local NGO dealing with youth employment and entrepreneurship programs, and it's very good to hear that there are some young people, students, intending to start their own business because we've just started to implement the project which which has a goal to develop some kind of support program for students' business initiatives. So I would use this opportunity to invite you to join to this initiative. We're going to have that program since the June this year, and we're going to have some kind of trainings, mentoring support, and eventually financial support for good students' business ideas and initiatives. So we're going to invite you in the next event we will organize in early June.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I was in a meeting and that I was fortunate enough to be invited to, and I think there could be some really interesting things coming to the university. So starting this summer, so it should be fun.
Yes, Keith is helping us to organize and to develop the curricula and training, mentoring program for this.
Great.
Incubation program. Yeah.
Great.
Hello, my name is Vladimir. I'm team lead for a couple of developers. I have a team of 4 people.
Great.
We are early stage startup. We are developing business software. We are almost in MVP phase,
Great.
early stage, and I'm here to listen about that because this is match. We need fundraising. We need how to develop further, and all what is agenda in here particularly.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah.
So we are in that early stage, and we are doing it as a side job.
Yeah. What we would call moonlight.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So
But we are, I said, almost we are near MVP. So
great.
we have some kind of main canvas model, stuff like that, and now we are looking what to do further and how to go like that 10%
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. Good. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
My name is Dusan. I'm an entrepreneur, internet entrepreneur for maybe 15 years,
Yeah.
and a beekeeper for maybe 7 years.
Awesome.
And running bweb.co. It's a startup with Georgia. Maybe you heard that conference. He explained that.
I did. Yeah, I did.
In
Yeah.
a few sentences, there are 2 of us, and we already rose some grant from European Union, and now we are in a proofing phase. We haven't proved the product yet. No one has paid for it for now, and we are trying to pivot that in some maybe software for beekeepers, hive management or something.
Right.
And at the moment, we are attending Katana project. It's a European Union project, and we'll try to develop some IoT device for beehives.
Cool. Yeah, I've got some ideas for you guys. A couple things I've seen, so I'll share that with you later. That's great. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Miloš. I'm a product designer for a while.
Great.
I have few products designed by myself, and my ideas included in those products. I design graphically apps and platforms that are innovative and involve something new that hasn't been seen by the world yet. I created the idea for a bot that teaches English, and the idea is that bot actually uses VR and learn English with conversations,
Right.
with conversation with people. The bot will use VR, and the idea is to present the real life situations in that VR scenarios. Right? Currently, I am seeking for new opportunities to apply where I can get funding and development for further development of that bot, because I currently applied for Enterprises Ireland, and that is declined with no feedback for now.
Where is that based out of?
That's Dublin.
Oh, okay.
That's Dublin.
Yeah.
I work for a Dublin company,
Oh, okay.
and it's good, but I think I could try more. I can apply for something else. That's why I'm here.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that. Hi.
Hello, my name is Sofia, and I'm a young architect currently working as a freelancer. But actually, I have some plans for the future, not defined very well for now, but
Right.
I'm here to learn something new.
Fantastic. Good. Thanks for coming.
Hello, my name is Alex. I'm working in a family company. We're producing some chocolate stuff.
You're already my best friends.
Yeah, besides that, I have some ideas on my own.
Yeah.
So I came here to hear some new stuff and to try to realize that,
Yeah.
to implement that
Yeah.
in some future.
Yeah. In some way, at some time. Yeah. I get that.
Maybe to do
Diversify.
to diversify business.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in
If you
some
want to
way-
diversify chocolate business, you want And I say that only half joking because ironically, my first job, I'm from Vancouver in Canada, and so my first job when I moved there was at a chocolate factory in the office. So you and I can share some ideas. So it's cool. Go ahead.
My name is Danica. I'm from ICT cluster of Central Serbia. With Development Center of Kragujevac, we're partners on the project that Nemanja was mentioning. On one hand, I am here to acquire maybe deeper level of knowledge of the process, to understand how it's working, at least in one aspect.
Yeah.
And on the other, maybe I still don't have any idea, but I think about it. I don't have a formed it, but I think about it maybe to enter into internship. Yeah, that.
I know what you're
That's
saying.
waters, yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
So it's
Great. Thank you. Last but not least.
Yeah. My name is Miloš. I'm the owner of one basically successful site here in Serbia.
Yeah.
It's naslovi.net. It's basically Google News for Serbia. It's very mature site.
Yeah.
Google News started in 2002, and the first version of Naslovi was created in 2003. So back then it was very immature internet in Serbia, basically, and my site grew all together with internet in Serbia in terms of visits and revenue, and started very, very slowly, and today it's basically in 10 or top 15 sites by visits in Serbia right now. I also have some other smaller projects, and basically, I don't know, for the future I have a plan not to be remembered just by Naslovi.net. I would like to start something new. I don't know really what, but for foreign markets, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. That's great. Good cross section. There's a couple of themes that I hear in this conversation. So there's a number of people here who are in the process of thinking about entrepreneurship and all that means, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's definitely some threads around funding. And so maybe we can use those two themes as part of this conversation. And so I guess, there's a few things that I think about as we go through this conversation. So some of you guys are like, hey, thinking about do I want to become an entrepreneur? Do I have what's a good idea? Starting to come up with sort of this process. And so I also heard a couple people mention about MVP and what does that mean? So one thing I want to highlight before we get started is your conversation about I'm now starting my next business, thinking about this next business. And so the one thing I want to highlight to everybody else in the room is successful entrepreneur comes back to the table to say new things to learn, right? And that's one of the things that I have always found as a hallmark of great entrepreneurs is that kind of constant desire to learn and adapt and to get fresh on information and to find out what the new trends are and to find out what the new technologies are, and so it's something that you guys will want to think about as you kind of go through this process. And I'm excited for all of you guys for being here, because it's a great way for you to get into this practice and into this rhythm of learning and connecting and building up your own knowledge base so that you're always ready for whatever presents itself. So, so I'm actually going to tie funding and launching a business together on a couple of levels, and then we can chat through it. Does that sound good? So the first thing that is true about launching a business is that between the stage that you're at, where you said, hey, I'm curious about entrepreneurship, right? I'm interested in this, through to where you're at, which is you're almost at MVP. That is the place that, for the most part, is absolutely the hardest to fund a business. And the reason, of course, is because there's very little for an investor to hang their hat on, as we like to say. So in other words, there's nothing for me to hold on to. I meet you, you seem really nice, you seem really smart, you tell me about this great idea, but it's an idea. Now what, right? And so when we go through this process, an investor will look at you and they're gonna ask one question. You heard this when we were chatting, right? Like an investor will ask one question and they're gonna ask the question, you know, do I meet you? Sounds like an interesting idea. You seem nice, you seem smart. So do I trust you and or your team with my money? Right? Because that's fundamentally what an investor will say to themselves. And the reason is because if you were doing more than $1 million in revenue every year, I don't have to think about whether or not I just trust you. Like I can look at the numbers and say, well, this business is kind of running and it's profitable, right? Like in your context. And so with that in mind, they're gonna need to make a judgment call about whether or not you and your team are a good, you know, gonna be good stewards or good guides for my money, or can I trust you with it? And so the interesting thing is that we as entrepreneurs, we very rarely ask ourselves that question, right? Because at the end of the day, like you're going through this process and you're close to MVP, and there's some combination of your time and your team's time and maybe some hardware and some software costs and a few other things. You guys have put a lot of money into this, some amounts. Some of it is just opportunity cost, right? Like you could have been doing something else, but instead you were working on this. And so it's not often that we go through this exercise of saying, so would I trust myself and my team with my money? And it's actually the most important question to ask. And the reason for that is because if you can look at your idea and you can look at your team and say, yeah, I am gonna do this, I am gonna become an entrepreneur, then you're actually a very, very important step towards getting funding, right? Because if you believe it yourself, then you have a much stronger probability to make a funder believe in what it is you're doing. So does anybody have any guesses as to what is the most important input or the most important factor that helps us to answer that question? So if you guys were to look at me, so let's say I'm pitching you guys for an idea, and there's 3, 6, 10, 13, 14, I'll count Milos, 15 people. So let's say I need 15,000 euros to get us started. So I'm asking all of you guys for 1,000 euros each. So what do you need to know in order for you to even consider it? Because I'm asking.
Some kind of business plan, something like that.
Okay, so business plan?
Yeah.
Well, most important and hard thing for me was the team, people.
Team.
Prototype.
I know when I solved that problem with the team.
Yeah.
We made something, and everything. When you have a team, you have people.
Yeah.
You will make products. You will pivot. You will do whatever.
Good.
By my experience,
Yeah.
At this stage,
Yeah.
most hard and the most significant, positive.
Good.
That's my opinion.
Good.
And
Yeah. You said prototype.
Prototype. I do prototypes.
Yeah.
I
Great.
do mock-ups, prototypes, presentations. If it's a digital product, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. What other things would help you to make a decision to continue the conversation with me?
Well,
Business plan, we have a team, we have a prototype. What else?
innovative,
Experience.
some kind of innovative process or product or.
So it's unique.
Mhm.
Okay, good. And I have experience.
If any, I mean, there are also young, new guys. You never know what
Yeah.
what is going
But
to
it
be.
would help if I had experience.
Yes, but if you have some background experience, that can be.
And how much they invested already in
Previous
business or in money or in
Time
working
hours,
hours.
working hours, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great.
I would
Fantastic.
ask you, how would you make money?
How do you make money? Business model, right? You bet. So these are all fantastic, and by the way, I would include them all. So the important part in this process is that your decision to start a business is in many respects very similar to an investor's decision to invest in you. So the first place they start is yours, team, right? So it's really important to note that when we make a decision to be an entrepreneur, the first thing we're doing is saying, I believe in myself. Like that's fundamentally what we're saying. But team is critical. So you mentioned, for example, about that accelerator in Ireland, right? And so that would be one of the questions that I would have about your application is like, how big was the team? You know, so it is important to note that in certain cases, so for example, Erste Bank has a microfinance program now. Erste Bank probably, I don't know for sure, but they would probably invest in a solo entrepreneur with a good business plan, good fundamentals, like et cetera, et cetera. Accelerators never would. Like if you don't have 2 or 3 people on the team out of the gate, they just won't even talk to you, right? So it is important to note that team will mean different things to different people. Sometimes you start freelance, right, as an architect, but then other times you need to have a team. So when you're going about this process of saying, do I want to be an entrepreneur? When is the right time? What's the right idea? One thing that you guys want to start doing right now is saying, I need to start to meet some people who are going to be on my team. Now, in your case, you're starting with you, and then you're going to add over time. In your case, you already have a core team. The question is always what next? Like what's that next hire? And so the important part in the process of going through this, which impacts both launching a business as well as funding a business, is, you guys know the term org chart? So organization chart, which basically means like here's the schematic of the team and what roles they play. So think about it from this perspective. They're the primary categories in an organization chart, right? Sales and marketing, and sometimes sales and marketing separate. And then we have product, which might be software or it might be chocolate, right? But anybody who's involved in that. We might have operations, we'll have finance and accounting. And so what you need to do is as you're thinking about your idea, you're saying, what role do I play in my business? And then what roles in the company are critical for success at launch, right? So for example, if you have a team of developers, but you have no marketing people or no sales people, depending on if it's B2C or B2B, if you don't have that, you yourself should worry. Because you kind of need to look at each other and say, well, who's going to do the marketing? And if the answer is no, like if everybody's on me, you know, then you're like, time to go look for another person, right? Or we were talking earlier and your colleague was saying you're really sharp with numbers, right? And so you're saying, well, I got the numbers covered and I'll have the idea, but I might need somebody for sales or what have you. And so that's a really important part in this process. A business plan becomes more and more important in your process when you are seeking money from more institutional sources. Erste Bank, a venture capital firm, right? These guys are going to look for more detailed pieces. But if you're looking for, say a serial entrepreneur, they may not need to see a whole business plan. They might do well with what we call a business model canvas. which is kind of a business plan on one page if you haven't seen it. And so, but there will need to be some sense of that. And the important part as we dig into that, you're gonna actually really touch on a couple of things, which is, to your point earlier, what's unique, right? And then somebody talked about competition, how I'm different. You did.
I
Touched on it a bit.
well,
And oh, the other one was how you make money. That's the other piece that I was thinking of. Because when you kind of come up with your business plan or a business model canvas, which is a nice high level, does anybody not know what a business model canvas is? Okay, so business model canvas is exactly as I say, it's a business plan on one page. And the benefit is that if you go online, there's actually some fantastic templates that you can use you can edit them online and you can play around with them, and there's a couple of websites where you can actually save it and then come back to it. And it's a fantastic way, especially for you guys who don't have ideas yet. What you can do is you can kind of insert an idea at the top and say, frozen chocolate drinks, new idea, right? And then you're like, okay, target market, who's gonna buy it? The value proposition, why are they gonna buy it, right? What are my major cost drivers? How am I gonna make money? How am I gonna sell it? Am I going direct to retail or am I gonna do wholesale? So you get to ask all these different questions, right? If you're building a software company, then is it software as a service, or is it license fee? Is it freemium? Is it a native mobile app, or is it a website, right? You get to start to play with these different pieces. And it's amazing how quickly over time you'll start to go through ideas in a business model canvas setting, because you'll start to write some stuff out and you'll be like, no, this is a terrible idea. And then you kind of scratch and then you go to the next one. Great, that's the path. But the important part is it validates the idea in your own mind, and it also prepares you for launch, because when you look at the business model canvas and you say key resources, key activities, so key resources is what do I need, and if it's like €1 million, well, you better go get €1 million before you get going, right? And then key activities might be marketing. And then you're like, right, we got everything else covered, not marketing, let's go find some marketing person, right? Hypothetically. So that's an important part in this journey. Now, prototype. Prototype is an interesting one in that in certain contexts, a prototype is actually a fantastic next step in both validating your own idea as well as validating yourself to an investor. And so the reason is, if you can create a prototype, it actually tells you can get something done.
Yes.
And it also tells an investor you can get something done, which is kind of nice, right? It also proves to yourself that you're capable of doing it, right? And that's really, really important. Now, what I will say to you is, if you're building something unique, as in never been done before, or it's a true variation on, so you were describing your product earlier, and it's kind of an interesting one, right? Because it's I've never heard of that kind of combination of features and value proposition.
Actually, it's very simple product.
It is.
It's very simple. It's a bot.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything special.
Right. So here's the important part, is that in certain industries and in certain and with certain investors, a prototype is more than enough to excite the investor, to ignite their imagination, and to prove to yourself that you're capable of doing it. In other industries, not enough. So one industry that or two industries that I will share with you, one is marketplace. If you're creating a marketplace, an online marketplace, to create a prototype website, people, and you know why? Because the hard part in a marketplace is not creating the website. The hard part is building the marketplace. So, finding enough buyers and enough sellers. Airbnb is the perfect example, right? Prove to me that you can get 1,000 rooms and 10,000 people, engaging on those rooms. That's the expectation now in the investor world, is to say, if you're building a marketplace, you prove to me. So now you need to plan ahead and say, I need to get that far before I even ask.